everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Experience Maker Live. I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker, author, and coach. Very happy to have you here today for another spectacular episode. Before we begin, I want to talk to you about two things. The first is I wanted to introduce another show that I have been very excited to be involved with that I want to make sure you're aware of. It is called CXCY, and I'm doing it with my friends at ClueTrack, who help companies to dive deep into customer analytics, specifically online reviews, to come up with some amazing takeaways and understand the why of customer experience. Every episode, we talk about a new industry. And even if you're not in that industry, we will give you the takeaways so that you can learn something in your own business. So go to cluetrack.com and click on resources, and you'll see under that tab the CXCY show. The first episode we featured was the beauty and cosmetics industry. We then looked at air purifiers of all places, but believe it or not, we found some incredible takeaways there. And our next episode, which I cannot wait for, is going to dive deep into the chocolate industry. Sweet. See what I did there? All right. Also, I wanted to introduce our new sponsor for the show. I am so excited to have them aboard. It is Zoho Desk. Over 50,000 businesses around the world trust Zoho Desk to improve agent productivity, increase customer happiness, and build loyalty. Transform your customer service with the industry's first context-aware help desk. Manage your customer conversations across multiple channels, such as email, chat, phone, social, and your website. Respond and perform follow-up activities without breaking a sweat. Just go to the URL on the screen, zoho.com/desk, and do me a favor, tell them that the Experience Maker sent you. All right, I am so excited for today's guest. He was actually recommended to us by another guest, which is awesome because that is the best way for me to find new guests for the show. Today, we are welcoming Dale Dupree. He is the founder and CSO of the Sales Rebellion. Now, the Sales Rebellion teaches sales teams to rebel against typical results. I can't wait to hear what that looks like. Dale, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, Dan? Thanks for having me on, man.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I'm always happy to talk sales because sales, in my opinion, is the beginning of the customer experience. It's before we even become a customer, so critical. Tell me a little bit about you and how you got into this business of the Sales Rebellion.
Sure. My story goes back all the way to 1984, which is the year that my father founded his copier firm that he owned and operated for 29 years. He had left the big box store where he had positioned himself in a career that could have lasted for the entirety of his working tenure. But he saw a lot of gaps in the way that people were treated, not just internally, but externally in regards to the customer-facing experience. Just as much as the politics behind the scenes, and his heart was huge. The guy wanted to not just sell copy machines, which is what he did for a living. He wanted to be able to impact people's lives. He wanted to be able to create a very cohesive environment and to bring culture to the workplace. Like I always hear people talk about how business is business. My dad was the kind of guy that made business personal, and he believed that it was, and he lived by that. Where does I fit in all this? 1985. I was born a year after my father started that business with toner running through my veins and the calling of becoming something much greater inside of my life. And definitely 100% going back at some point on all of my dreams and aspirations to work at the company business. I said that there's two reasons I said that. Number one is that this is crazy, a crazy thought actually in general, but because I don't even know how many people out there listening right now are like, yeah, copy machines, like that's an industry, right? And actually know much more about it other than that. But in the copier world, for the majority of privately held firms, they are family owned and operated, believe it or not, even though it's like one of the sharkiest and hardest sales industries, without a doubt, to be in. They're very family oriented. And think of actually the episode of The Office where Dunder Mifflin goes to essentially scope out one of the smaller competitors that was owned by a husband and wife, and you go in and it's like, hey, and everybody's hugging, and they don't care if you see the customers, and because they know what their value and worth is, which is relationships and building something much bigger than just transactional sales processes. So that's where I get my start inside of the sales world. I went all over the world in a band on Warner Brothers Records, also started out on Pluto Records, if anybody's familiar with them. It's a great indie label with a lot of up and coming artists on it that we were very privileged to be on. I mean, it taught me a lot about not just music, but my career that I eventually wanted to have, which was sales. Every single night I sold to a bunch of strange people in venues all across the United States. And it was great and a good starting point for my life, but eventually went into the B2B space, worked for my dad for a few years, was acquired from a bigger organization. And I just started doing things that nobody had ever heard of. And I was breaking records that nobody could break for 20, 30 plus years or longer, you know, just industry standard concepts even. Here's what it is that people are supposed to be doing. And here's Dale. So in the midst of all that, I decided about 13 years into my sales career selling copy machines that I wanted to make a difference outside of the communities that I sold to. But I wanted to make a difference in the sales community, period, across the world, whether you sold SaaS, whether you sold dishwashers, whether you sold financial services. I wanted the ability to be able to give resources and teaching to folks that wanted to rebel against the mediocrity that is the sales world.
Man, I love it. That's like the best introduction I think we've had in 106 episodes here. So that's awesome.
I'm extra, bro.
Love the Toto reference. 1985 also, I'm sure you remember this very well, was the, excuse me, see, we're live here. I'm even sneezing live. 1985 was, of course, the year that my Chicago Bears went to the Super Bowl and won. Last time that happened, unfortunately. So you can tell how long I've been waiting. Let's see, what else? I was thinking of Better Call Saul, although I like the Office reference as well. But Better Call Saul also has some important scenes around selling copiers, which is pretty funny. But I love what you were talking about, this idea of kind of the human element and introducing that human element to the sales process, because it's always been my belief that people buy from people they like. And, you know, if we set aside price and we set aside product, what's left is the experience. And often in the sales piece, that's the person that you're dealing with. And I love that you've moved to B2B, because I think B2B companies especially need this help. They think sometimes that they're selling to an office or to an ivory tower instead of an actual human buyer there on the other end that has emotions and, you know, wants a relationship as well. So what do you see as the difference between B2C sales and B2B sales?
Well, because of what you said, here's the thing is I think that a lot of people, they look at the process of sales. Okay. And so like what you just said, I think is very poignant and eloquent in regards to the way that most people see sales, right? A lot of people would look at like a real estate transaction and they don't look at that as sales, believe it or not. If you were to ask the common man if they consider that to be a sales process, they would say, well, no, it's like buying a home. Right. So there's a disconnect because we have created a stereotype in sales, which is that if you're not wearing a suit and a tie and lying the entire time, then you're probably not in sales. Right. But the thing is that we're all in sales. Right. At the Rebellion, that's what we fully believe. We believe that teachers sell structure, that, you know, a broker sells a network, that a janitor sells a clean environment. Right. We believe that a buyer sells themselves. And so when we look at B2B and B2C, really, truly, there is no difference. We've compartmentalized those two things instead of understanding that sales is service, right? So if we're serving people, if we have this outlook of being leaders inside of that same word as well, too. So being willing to risk, being willing to lay down and let somebody else win instead of us taking all the glory, being willing to be, again, that servant inside of the process of life in general, then we're selling. Right. So it can be in a lot of different facets because of that. So really the disconnect for me when it comes to B2B or B2C is that you look at like an office, right? And you say, okay, well, sure, there's people in there, but really this is a business name. And because of that, what happens is we then start getting into the mechanical side of sales and the robotic side. And we say, all right, I gotta go convince these people. Number one issue, right? With salespeople trying to convince constantly. that they need to buy my product, right? And that it will be good for their environment for reason X, reason Y, reason C. And let's just say that one of those is I can save them money, another big issue. I can do it better than their current provider. Well, even if you can, nobody cares except for you, right? And the list goes on. Like the big thing about it, though, is that I think is important is that by understanding the negatives, it's easier to really come to the realization of what is needed inside the marketplace in regards to getting back to the positives and setting the general mindset of the industry back on track.
So I often say that salespeople and marketers are like distant cousins, like third cousins. You know, they're related, they share some blood, but it's actually a very different skill set. And I say that as a 20-year marketer who is still not totally comfortable in a sales role, even though I have to be every day in my business. Talk to me a little bit about how you see the difference between what a sales team does and what a marketing team does, and maybe how they overlap as well.
Sure. So I believe that sales is marketing and that marketing is sales, personally. So when I started my career in 2007, 2008, when I started selling copy machines, I realized very quickly that the marketing component of what it was that I wanted or that I needed inside of my sales walk would get me to what I wanted to accomplish. So I adopted this mindset of being a marketer as a salesperson very quickly. I was the guy that also said, well, what is marketing? Well, marketing to me is experiences. Marketing to me is the brand that we create, that people are buying into, the story we're telling, the future story that we're relaying as well too, of where they can go if they tap into us and what it is that we do as a professional. Or as a person too, right? Because I really, like, especially over the last 6 to 8 months, have just really looked at the way, again, that we label stuff. And I just think it's crazy to me, right? So even saying I'm a marketer or saying I'm a salesperson, to me, like, it's all the same at the end of the day, or it's aligned to some capacity. It might be a component inside of what it is that we're doing, but no matter what, the more we box things in, the harder it is to really get to the bottom line, or really like choose legendary, as we like to say, inside of the rebellion. So with that said, I was the guy that was kind of just like a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left in regards to the way you viewed me, right? So I wasn't ever right down the middle. And that's what marketing truly is, from my own experience, is not just, cool, I've got this fancy flyer, I've got this super dope business card on this like ivory white, with raised lettering. Like, none of that is cool. Okay. What's cool is the experience that you give to somebody else. So when they get a blank 4x6 doc and they're like, what is this? And it says, put me under a dark light. What are those going to help me here, Dan? What am I trying to say? Yeah, not a microscope, but like a blue light, a purple light. What am I thinking?
A spotlight.
What am I trying to say? A black light. Yeah, put me under a black light, right? I got a little card with this. Like, put me under a black light. Boom, I stick it under a black light. It shines on this little QR code that's like hidden on this piece of paper. And then I stick my phone over it and I scan that, and it takes me to a video, and it walks me through a story. The experience that we're providing for people in those moments, I don't give a crap what you're selling. They'll talk to you 100%. Sure. They want to just know. They'll be so curious as to what's going on and who you are and what you're trying to accomplish with this, right? That the messaging, sure, it's important, but most of it will just go in one ear and out the other because of what's happening to them, which is what happens in sales in general, and why marketing is so important, because a lot of people just hear salesperson, they don't hear anything else, right? And they move along. So that would be my take on the two.
All right. So as somebody who spent a long time in corporate America receiving sales pitches, one of the observations I had, and I know you're going to help me break this, or I know this is what you actually help your clients break. One of the observations that I had was that there was this sales handbook that every salesperson in the world was given. And the sales handbook had the exact same tactics down to the sentence. And the reason I knew this is that I would get an email from people in completely different companies that would use the same jokes. Like it was funny the first time I heard it, but maybe not the 100th time I heard it. And then I would get up in front later on in my career, I'd get up in front of salespeople and I'd say, don't do this, because this makes me roll my eyes. And I could see people in the audience being, oh shoot, get the joke out of my email, right? And it's like, why are they all following the exact same playbook?
So I think the biggest travesty inside of the sales world is that we do not teach or preach authenticity. So instead, what we do is we say, hey guys, there's like 6 to 10 people that have done this and made a lot of money, and we follow those people. We do as they say. They're like the literal prophets of the sales world to most people. And listen, I'm not downplaying people's success or the fact of the matter that there have been people that have come before my generation or the last generation that have done a very good job in sales, right? But that doesn't translate to your success. Their authentic self was what it was. And there's nothing you can do to replicate that. So even in the Rebellion, when we give tips and tricks out to our free Slack group, or if you're on my content on LinkedIn and seeing a couple things that I'm telling you to do, you'll always see an underlying message of like, hey, yeah, sure, I'm telling you that this will work. But at the same time, it's only going to work once, because it's not you, and it's not authentic to what it is that you need to be delivering to your community in order for them to have a better experience. What it is it's a gateway to open your mind to say, man, why am I writing emails with regards in the signature and hello first name is the opening line, and a subject that just stinks to begin with, right? It's why email is starting to suck wind as hard as it is over the last couple of years. Number one, the pandemic, right? And sales is always going to be evolving because humans are ever changing. And because of that, with technology, the office environments, work from home, whatever's happening 10 years from now will be much different than 2 years ago. And so if we're not moving along with this mindset of how do I evolve this? How do I continue to connect with people? How do I not shackle myself to the playbook, but instead write my own legacy? Until salespeople start to do that, nothing's going to change, bro. And I know exactly what jokes you're talking about. Your emails. And you know what's funny is I think it's so hilarious that people look at something such as the corporate world and they go, oh, I got to do this different. I got to do this different. I got a guy that started an analytics company. Shout out to Trent Russell, one of the most amazing analytics dudes on the planet. If you're interested, Green Skies is his company. Fantastic organization. He's third party, basically helps with a lot of auditing, blah, 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 numbers, boring, right? So what he does though is that he connects with people as a rebel, right? To build his business and to start what it is that he's doing today. He didn't bang the phone, 50 to 100 a day just to see who would pick up and set an appointment with him. He gave experiences. One of the people that he got in front of was a Fortune 100 company. He sent a piece of paper that had a coffee stain on it, and it told the person on the other side of it that, hey, you're going to throw this away anyway, so at least I figured at least it'd be useful, and so I made you a coffee coaster. Enjoy, right? And that person scanned a QR code on that page, went to a Calendly site, booked an appointment without ever talking to him, right? Yeah. So he had a meeting with this guy cold, right, just because of the experience that he provided for him, because the guy on the other side, just like you, Dan, is a normal, breathing, living human being. And I think that that's the biggest piece of the puzzle in sales that we just disconnect from, and we don't even realize it in most cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about standing out from the crowd, which I think is one of the things that absolutely has to happen. You have to be creative, you have to be unique, because if you and because the second piece is you have to understand from the point of view of the person that you are trying to get their attention, right? So as a person in corporate America who was a buyer, I was receiving just dozens and dozens of pitches every week. So when you think about that and you think about, okay, my answer is just going to be, I'm going to throw one more email in his inbox, it's just not going to work. One of my favorite ones that I would get all the time would be the follow-up email that would say, just bringing this to the top of your inbox. Well, I don't want it at the top of my inbox. So you're not thinking about me, you're thinking about you, right? You want it in the top of my inbox. I want it anywhere but the top of my inbox. So thinking through how we even communicate in such a way where we are there, as you said, as a person of service, to be of service to somebody versus we're there for ourselves. That is an immediate change that I think, when salespeople make, it does stand out. There's some other quirky stuff that's worked, at least for me. The one guy sent me, I was at one company and he sent me a bottle of wine. and the bottle of wine. So obviously, it's this big package that shows up in the mail. I'm going to open it, and the bottle of wine had a lock on the top, and it required a 4-digit code to unlock it so you could drink the wine. So I thought that was clever. I put the wine on my desk, and I immediately noticed that everyone that walks by is trying to crack the code. So I'm like, I want to see how long this goes, right? There's only 9,999 combinations. And sure enough, one day some guy walks by and cracked the code. And so I thought that was funny because now, the salesperson wanted me, I think the note said, call me for the code and then you can enjoy the wine. And I thought like, haha, we got you, right? But I liked it because it stood out. Another example that I think was really interesting was somebody sent me a book in the mail, and it was a book that they thought I would be interested in. I will say I'm still a huge fan. I'm interested to know if someone born in 1985 thinks the same way, but I'm still a big fan of snail mail, because especially when people are back in the office, because we don't get a lot of mail in the office. So when we get it, we open it. It's got a huge open rate, much better than any email. And so the guy that sent me the book, I wasn't actually interested in his service, but I called him back anyway to thank him for the book. We had a nice conversation. And what was interesting to me was he said, thank you so much for contacting me. Even though it's a no, you've just saved me a ton of time. I'm not going to bother you anymore. I could cross you off the list and go to somebody else, right? And so these kinds of things can get people's attention if you just dare to be a little bit different. So I love that that in your LinkedIn you say that about the sales rebellion, that you teach people to rebel against typical results. So tell me, what are typical results, and tell me what are results after we become a rebel.
It's a great question. I appreciate you bringing it up, and I'm gonna actually tie it back into what you were just talking about, even.
Sure.
So in regards to this concept of, for example, following up with people, I think that it's a sin to just check in on people or to send them anything in regards to your last email, bumping this, unless literally it needs to be bumped, like literally it has to be. You've already had dialogue. The person requested specific information. You need answers. Those are moments when you can bump things. But even when you bump it, like, be real about it. Like, hey, listen, I know you don't want to do this because it's work, but whenever you could get it back to me, I'll appreciate that. And I'll be diligent about staying in touch with you, just like your mom would if she asked you to get the chores done around the house. You want me to buzz off at any point? Let me know. If I speak to you like a real living human that's very real, very raw, and like, hey, there's no drama here, man. Just I want to serve you. Then it translates differently. So the first thing that I would say is that what we teach people is a basic understanding of human psychology. First off, we focus a lot on accommodation theories and communication, which no sales trainers, I should say, that I know of. There's a couple out there. Bernadette McClellan actually is one. I should give a shout out to her. Are really talking about the actual psychology of sales. What they are is they're like making crap up about it, right? Instead of like saying that, well, like, it's not about the psychology of sales, it's about the psychology of human behavior and communication. So if I'm going to accommodate Dan, there's no way in hell that you're going to catch me send him an email saying, want to put this at the top of your inbox. That's not accommodating, period. Right? Yeah. There's an agenda tied to most things. You brought up the wine. Typical results are that even when you send that bottle of wine with the code on it, you don't get a response. And you don't get a response because there's an agenda attached to that. Hey, if you want to drink this wine, you better call me. Hey, let's do a 10-minute appointment for a $25 gift card. How's that for an ROI, right? These are stupid tactics. I'm sorry, anybody watching or listening that's done it.
There's no such thing as a 10-minute appointment, and I know that.
Yeah, right. It's our biggest pet peeve when people ask for something like 15 minutes. It's like, you just ask somebody for a half hour to an hour or just some time. Can I get some time on your calendar?
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, people are going to accommodate around what it is that you need from them. They're not interested in your agenda of just like getting something quick and easy on the calendar. That doesn't make any sense to buyers in most cases, right? So going back to this identity of the typical, right? And what makes it better is like you get the wine in the mail with the code, right? But instead of, hey, hit me up, there's a poem. And the poem, when you read it, you're like, this is interesting. You set it on your desk, and within 2 days, another comes in the mail. And it ties back to the wine just a little bit, right? And let's just say that it's like a chiller or something for when you finally get it open, right? With another poem. And then a third thing a couple days later comes in the mail. It says, hey, you want to know what's crazy? I already gave you the code to unlock this thing. It's in the 2 poems that I sent you already. As soon as you can figure it out, have fun,
Right.
drinking that wine, hopefully with a significant other, whatever else. I'll call you and find out how it went. Right. And that to me, again, is the ultimate glory that we can provide other people in sales, is the experience that's fun. That is, it is absolutely scalable for all the people out there that are like, that's not scalable. Like, give me a break, right? It is, because if I can get through to Dan, one person whose life that I can not only give impact and value through experience with, but then have a very cohesive understanding of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish in my business walk and my personal life, that Dan can then say, I like this dude, and his reputation precedes him. I am suddenly breaking into networks. I'm breaking into circles I never would have imagined that I could get into, but we think so surface level. To get past typical is to choose to become a rebel and start your own rebellion in regards to the way that mediocrity is so inherently normal inside of sales, right? The idea of, hey, if you can get 2 sales a month and you'll hit your quota. Well, why are you not reaching for 4 or 5 in that case, as best as you possibly can, through a mindset of excellence, through the concept of radically educating people, through the identity of storytelling and really translating experiences through those types of mediums, instead of pitching people all day, right? Those things don't work anymore. They do, sure. Like, there are companies out there that are selling stuff, right? The turnover in sales is stupid in 2022. The stats that I saw recently, like from the not the sales world, but like the hiring world and the placement world, I mean, it was like almost mind-boggling. I don't believe it, to be quite frank with you, yet. Like, I need a couple more years to really see what plays out here. But
and
I mean, the tenure is like 1.2 years now, right, Dan? It's crazy. Go ahead, please interrupt.
Yeah, and the problem is that hurts the salespeople even more, because, again, being on the other side of it, Joe Salesman calls me up from ABC Company, and he and I have a conversation, and 6 months later, now he's calling me up from DEF Company to sell me on something totally different, and then 6 months after that, he's now at some other company. And it's like, at some point, I get that you've taken your Rolodex along with you, but this, one of the things that frustrates me, and we are running up on time, but one of the things that frustrates me is this misunderstanding that, or this feeling that my product is good for everyone. So I'm just going to call up, I'm just going to look, sort the companies A to Z and just start calling everybody, because who wouldn't want my product? And if you do just a little bit more work, you figure out who wouldn't want your product. And that allows you to figure out who would want your product and to create a pitch that is more relevant to that person. So I would get so many pitches, and I get pitches today. I got one just yesterday. I got an email that said, something to the effect of, I'm interested in knowing how your marketing agency is going. And I wrote back, I said, well, I'm interested in knowing too, because I don't have a marketing agency. So like, what are you doing? So I think understanding who your audience is, and this is a customer experience thing too, once they are customers, understanding that not every target is the same person. Not every person is in the same spot in their career, in the buying cycle, what have you. Just take a little bit of time to figure out who this person is, and that's going to be your connection point. And I actually find that it's actually helped a lot sometimes on Zoom. I had a situation where I was talking to a prospect, and as soon as we started the Zoom call, I noticed that on his wall, he had a framed jersey of Michael Jordan. Okay, I'm a Chicagoan. I once delivered a pizza to Michael Jordan. I love telling people that story. Boom, we've got a relationship 30 seconds into the call that has nothing to do with business. And now I can have a conversation, and there's an openness to that, to when we actually get to the business part, because I've just taken the time to observe something about somebody and create that relationship. All right, I'm off my soapbox. I feel like, Dale, we could chat for a whole lot longer, but if people want to become sales rebels, how do they find you?
They can find me at thesalesrebellion.com. We're actually getting ready to launch a new website here in the next month, so be on the lookout. It's going to be really epic. From there, you can either find our free Slack channel, a bunch of content, or you can head over to any social channel, linkedin.com/IM/copierwarrior, my old brand, or at Sales Rebellion on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. we're on everything. And bro, just to reiterate what we've talked about and wrap up what you just said, ditch the pitch, give experiences, lean into community, and start a rebellion.
I love it. Thank you, sir. Definitely go follow Dale and the Sales Rebellion. The content's awesome. Even if you're not in sales, he's teaching so much about just how to communicate with people and how to create experiences. It's absolutely worth it. Thanks for your time today, man. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
And thank you for being here as well. I really appreciate it. Next week, I'm going to welcome a friend of mine, actually, a business school classmate of mine, Steve Pockross. He is now the CEO of Verblio, which is a multimedia content creation platform. They are doing some amazingly hilarious things in marketing, both their business and even in the employee experience. Their job descriptions are super fun to read. You read that job description, you want to come work at this company. So Steve is with me next week, and it's going to be very interesting because I'm going to be live at an event that I'll be speaking at, so I will not be here with my typical background here. We're going to be doing it from the road next week, so we'll see how that works. Again, I want to remind you and thank you to my sponsors, Zoho Desk. Please go visit them at zoho.com/desk for all of your customer conversations needs, and tell them that the Experience Maker sent you. All right, I'm Dan Gingiss, the Experience Maker. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week on the Experience Maker Live Show.